Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Marsha Blackburn. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Nashville. I hope everyone is having a great time. I have to tell you, I heard yesterday was robust with lots of conversations from politicians and pundits and a lot of talk about 2020 and where the races are going to go or not going to go. And today I want to spend a few minutes talking with you about an issue where, believe it or not, there may be differences of opinion on exactly how we ought to work, but let me tell you something. Everybody says we've got to do something about this because it is amazing how big tech has changed the way we live our lives. And this has really happened over about the last 10 years. And of course, there are lots of perks that take place with using technology platforms. We keep in touch with friends. We do online shopping. It's a big time saver. And I would venture to guess that some of you have used Google Maps and rideshare to go down and see some of the honky-tonks or go to the Gulch or go to East Nashville or maybe even out to Franklin and then get yourself back. The excitement is really there when it comes to using these new platforms. But the big tech experience has been marred by a reality check. We're more connected and aware, but every message, photo, purchase, and location ping is tracked, logged, and permanently made part of your virtual you. And that virtual you is now for sale to the highest bidder. For a long time, we didn't really think about why all these platforms were offering these services for free. It wasn't until targeted advertising became a little bit too close for comfort that we started to think about it. And by then, big tech was everywhere. It doesn't matter if it is banking or healthcare, car insurance, or working with a doctor over email. They're following every single thing you do online. That growth is directly associated with Silicon Valley's understanding of how to capture and transform consumer data into an advertising revenue stream. And for a while, a lot of people made a lot of money, and consumers who had been turned into commodities, and yes, you are the product when you are online, these consumers were none the wiser. But with skyrocketing popularity came the mess that is now the virtual space in 2019. The importance of the ad revenue became apparent to even casual users who became frustrated with constant pop-ups and video ads. And then they felt like they couldn't get rid of them once they were on their computer screen. Platforms once used to share information have been weaponized. Reputations and careers can be destroyed in 140 characters or less. Companies who digitize the healthcare and finance industries learned the hard way that data security protocols need updating as often as their branding. And just like that, the consequences of mishandling data and thus mistreating a global customer base escalated to epic proportions. Last week, Twitter stock cratered because a software glitch that wouldn't allow for ultra-precise ad targeting, even though the growth of their user base had far exceeded projections. Revenue rules everything that these companies do. Follow the dollar. Apple and Google are struggling to protect their hardware from state-sponsored hackers in China. They've suddenly found themselves responsible for putting potential spy devices in the hands of repressed Uyghur minorities and pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. And Facebook, I got to tell you, it's always about Facebook, isn't it? And I think that's why Mark Zuckerberg always looks so unhappy. Facebook has sent various officials to endure days of questioning from me and my colleagues, and I will tell you, I don't think they're liking it one bit. And last week, Mark Zuckerberg himself sat in a House hearing for 5 hours, and I am not certain that he ever answered one single question. Facebook's habit of glossing over the public's increasingly urgent concerns about privacy and security is a great example of how big tech has outsmarted itself. Here in Tennessee, we say they've been too cute by half. For example, I'm sure many of you are perfectly willing to share what you liked on Instagram yesterday, and some of you are probably posting things right now. So much of this information isn't sensitive, and even if it is sometimes weird when that little Dollar Shave Club ad will follow you from Instagram to iHeartRadio and back over to The Hill, it doesn't make you feel exploited. The problem is that these companies deliberately fudge the explanation of their policies in an effort to confuse us into consenting, which we all know really isn't consent at all. Consumers tell us they feel like they've been manipulated, and fortunately, we're finally beginning to get some answers because we're demanding those answers. But all these years we've spent unconsciously documenting every move we made, slowly but surely trained us to think differently about what it means to have our entire lives monitored and tracked by private corporations. The scandals are so common that we tweet jokes about being tracked by Twitter based on the contents of our tweets. And what are we doing? We know. We all know that convenience and entertainment come at the expense of privacy and security in today's world. We see all the news reports. We listen to the hearings and the sketchy pop-ups informing us that 50 new pages have been added to a privacy policy that you are really never going to read. You move down to click, I accept. We let it go because this trap has already been sprung. Now just imagine walking a few blocks down to the Cumberland River and throwing your smartphone along with all of your banking apps, airline apps, iMessage, Google Maps, Uber, Lyft, tossing the whole thing in the river. I hate to tell you this, but they've got you, and that is why Congress is stepping up. There's only one problem. One simple bill is not going to fix this. Think about it. When you see us on the news talking big tech and taking on big tech, we're really addressing privacy, data security, content standards, deep fakes, fake news, fake ads, and portability, ownership, who owns the virtual you, and a lot of other things. And what doesn't even touch some of this is the antitrust concerns with Facebook and Google, or what being immersed in digital content 24/7 is doing to our ability to concentrate and interact with other human beings. These companies are in many ways more powerful than governments. Like I said, pull up a chair to this debate because this one's going to take us a while, and it is going to take collaboration with big tech to make this work. Congress does not have the knowledge or the bandwidth that it would need to write comprehensive regulations dictating to Google how Google should operate in every situation. We in the Senate are self-aware enough to know we can't do this by ourselves, and earlier this year, Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham and other members of Senate leadership approached me about heading up a tech task force. I've had a long history of working on tech policy, both before Tennesseans sent me to Washington and during my time as a member of the U.S. House. I knew that if we handle our meetings like normal committee meetings, we wouldn't get very far. So I set up roundtables with experts from some of the biggest tech companies on the planet. We've had 3 meetings so far with some of these companies, and what has struck me is hearing these high-powered executives ask. They are asking for stringent federal regulations to control their businesses. And I'm not the only one who is shaking my head at this. We've all seen the problems that have been caused by GDPR, those regulations in the EU, or the confusion with CCPA, the California proposed regulations. Both of these schemes have killed innovation and all but frozen out startups who don't have the money and the staff to keep up with all the paperwork that would be necessary for that compliance. I'm looking closely at plans that will avoid these pitfalls by offering guidelines and rules of the road for companies to follow instead of trying to put them in a straitjacket with hundreds of pages of compliance. No one knows big tech better than big tech. So who better to work with to come to a decision of how they should begin to protect themselves? You know what Facebook's internal data protection operation should look like? Facebook should be able to weigh into this based on the guidelines Congress sets forth. These companies really are massive, and they all operate differently. And Washington bureaucrats need to put some simple guidelines in place instead of a straitjacket mentality. For example, I recently reintroduced in the Senate a bill that I first began to push in the House. It's called the Browser Act, and it would require tech companies to do a few simple things to provide their customers with clear and conspicuous privacy policies, ones that you can actually read and understand, to allow customers to opt in to sharing sensitive information, which we define in the bill, to allow customers to opt out from sharing less sensitive information, which we also define in the bill. What it doesn't do is mandate every single step of a compliance process. It does require that we have one set of rules for the entire internet ecosystem, and it puts you, the consumer, in charge and in ownership of your information, your virtual you. They are the private sector, and they have the right to create a user experience. But what we're saying is the focus on the control of all their information should rest with you. It belongs to you. I've encountered some skepticism, but my approach has gained bipartisan support. And I know for many that's probably shocking, but yes, in 2019, bipartisan support and agreement is possible in Washington, D.C. The reason people are jumping on my plan
is because they know it's important to create an accountability buffer between tech companies and their customers. By setting up the guidelines and letting the innovators decide how to fit compliance into the user experience, we'll be able to see who is committed to doing business above board and who is trying to game the system. Users will be able to choose for themselves who they're comfortable doing business with without having to deconstruct compliance filings and confusing PR blasts. For a long time now, experts and tech writers have treated Congress's foray into this policy area as a running gag. They don't understand tech. They don't understand the internet. They need to leave this to the experts. And of course, we've all heard that over and over again. And in some part, we agree. One of the defining characteristics between many Washingtonians is a complete inability to stop talking about things and to actually get something done that the American people want to see done. In the wrong hands, a bill meant to rein in big tech would implode the entire industry and would end up creating a barrier to entry for new starts and embolden big tech. We know that this issue is at a crossroads, and we have a choice between rushing into a heavy-handed regulatory scheme or taking our time and getting some things done right. Building a productive working relationship between Washington and the Silicon Valley will be the easy part. We're already well on our way with this. The question is, will Silicon Valley be able to repair their relationship with you, the American consumer? Will they be willing to take their hands off of your data and stop commercializing and commoditizing your data and realizing that you indeed own the virtual you? We hope that you will continue to follow us. We know this isn't going to be an easy debate, but we are well on our way to making certain that you are the owner of your virtual you. Thanks for letting me join you. Enjoy your time in Nashville.